all you beautiful people around the globe. Welcome to another episode of Blue Blooded, your favorite college basketball podcast. I hope I am your host, Ryan Hammer. Obviously, as you can see if you're watching, I am alone today. GM and co-host Adam is on vacation with his family, as he should be taking that in August and capitalizing on living near the beautiful New Jersey shore in the summer. But we will not be alone for the entire show today. We have a lot to get through. This actually is a super good episode with a great guest coming on. Fifth year eligibility is all over the place right now. I think that's the thing that people have asked me about most, the thing that people want to know about most right now. I get that. So instead of me giving you what I know 75 to 85% of, I have a legal expert, Mitch Gilfillan, coming on. He played at Lehigh back in the day. He coached college basketball. Now he's a practicing attorney, and he consults with the NCAA, with the Field of 68, with coaches, with people all over college sports, and especially college basketball. So he is going to have a great segment. He's going to give you everything you need to know on that. We'll talk about Kentucky, getting Mark Mitchell, and how they look this season. We'll talk about a couple other fifth-year commitments, some other news and notes, and then we have a ton of Q&A. I think I have 6 questions saved that we'll have as a big segment. We'll get into some breakout players, some potential All-Americans, building lineups, mid-major stars that you should look out for, and some other stuff. So let's take a quick break. We will hop into news and notes, and we'll get into the legal stuff. Okay, news and notes around the nation. I think I want to start with the fifth-year updates with Mitch Gilfillan, because it is why most people are probably watching and listening to this right now, at least today, especially in August. It's what the people need to know about most. So without further ado, here is the man himself and everything you need to know on updates with fifth-year eligibility. Maybe the most important segment this show has ever had in our entire life, to hash out all of the legal nonsense and BS that has been going on in the world of fifth-year eligibility in college sports. I got the main man, probably, in my opinion, the best person to have on the show right now, besides the actual judges and attorneys that are involved in all the cases. We got Mitch Gilfillan, who is an ex-college basketball player at Lehigh, an ex-college basketball coach, but now practicing attorney and also legal expert. You've done stuff with the Field of 68. We were talking before about all your experience. You got the perfect blend for this, so I appreciate you coming on here.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me, and certainly appreciate the work that you're doing, the influence you have on the college basketball space. We're all watching.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. And I'll keep that in mind. Did you ever think you'd be this busy with the college sports in August?
You know, it's a perfect intersection of sports and law. And so when it's been, obviously brewing behind the scenes for a long time, starting with Ed O'Bannon back in the day with the NIL and the name, image, likeness on video games, it's really all colliding at once. And if you've been involved these past 5 years, I think, and you've kind of had an inside track, you know that this collision course was coming. But to happen in August, obviously so close to school, I think is eye-opening for everybody.
Yeah, kids are on campus at schools. A lot of the southern schools and all over the country, like kids' classes are starting in the next probably week, if not some of them started already. But fifth-year eligibility in college sports is an absolute nightmare right now, especially because it is August. Like, it's bad to be September in less than 2 weeks right now. It's a complete mess. And with all that, I wanted you to come on, set the course. I think I know everything, not fully, but everyone thinks they know everything. People are eligible, ineligible, back and forth, all these things. I want to kind of basically set the record straight with you, the expert, to kind of get that through. We know the nationwide case in Colorado that was going to cover, or is supposed to cover, the entire class of 2022 from high school guys getting a fifth year of eligibility that finished up their eligibility last year. That is supposed to cover all of them to get an extra year. We saw that get pushed through, and then the NCAA tried to appeal, and then they put in for a stay, and we just saw the 10th Circuit Court give them their stay. So tell the people what the difference between the stay and the actual appeal are, so that they understand that, please.
Yeah, so that was obviously a major decision that came down yesterday in the WSNY v. NCAA that featured a class action lawsuit involving over 2,000 athletes that were potentially going to be invading campus as early as today if the court would have ruled in their favor. And so what the stay means is another word for pause. It basically means the court needs more time to appreciate the arguments from both sides, understand the facts, the allegations from both sides, and then ultimately make a decision on the merits. So it's important to understand, like, this case has not been won or lost by either side yet. It's simply now going to be put on a briefing schedule on the court's trial docket that says, hey, we're going to hear this case on the merits and decide who's actually correct, and obviously if the plaintiffs will ultimately have a case.
Okay, so 2 questions off the back of that. The stay is obviously like when Judge Sweeney said that they plaintiffs came up with the case, she said like, I see your case in this, I'm approving it, whatever. That basically ruled the entire class eligible when everyone freaked out a few weeks ago, obviously. And everyone's saying, oh my God, all the fifth years are eligible. And then they start committing all over the place. And that kind of covered the entire class across the entire country. So now essentially those guys are on pause, not saying that yes or no in the end, but saying that you can't act as if you're going to be eligible until we have a formal ruling now, right?
Correct. I mean, those players, as we sit here today, August 22nd, are no longer eligible. And so they are no longer protected by that initial preliminary injunction that granted them that eligibility. And that's exactly what this is. It was a preliminary injunction. Preliminary in nature. There was nothing permanent about this. And so everyone was kind of waiting for this next step with the court. The 10th Circuit handed down yesterday what I think kind of with full force. It was a very short, a very, very brief order, but it said all it needed to. Interesting, though, about that order is 3 appellate court judges. I had the chance to review this, and that's typically what happens at the appellate court. 3 judges make their kind of decision or weigh in on it, and 2 of them sided with the NCAA, and 1 of them sided with the plaintiff. So I know this wasn't a slam dunk decision, a unanimous decision across the board. They had to consider kind of what's at stake here. Now, those athletes that are no longer protected by Colorado, they may be protected in another state court case, or they may have protection somewhere else. But that Colorado case right now is going to be on hold for some time.
Yeah, I was asking about that in a second. Also on the Colorado case, at least the timeline on the appeal. So now they have to wait for the appeal to get fully denied or fully approved, and then if it gets denied, do they still go to a full case, or if the appeal gets denied, then they're all good, and that's basically saying the court's decision was correct in the preliminary injunction.
Well, the 10th Circuit could actually send the case back down to the district court level to have the trial on the merits. So what's going to happen at the appellate court level now, the federal appellate court, is that each side will have the opportunity to file their briefs, which pretty much they've already done in this initial kind of round of litigation. There'll be additional data, perhaps facts, evidence that's presented, so the appellate court can make a decision ultimately whether the stay should remain in place permanently. And so, or where this should go, or if it's going to get reaffirmed or denied or whatnot back down to the trial court level. So this could still get reversed. Let me be very clear. And it could be sent back down to the district court level in front of Judge Sweeney. Here's the problem, Ryan, is that the calendar year and the sports year and eligibility for these athletes pretty much ends come May. And so now everybody's looking at this kind of 9-month window saying, well, wait a minute, fall sports are in dire straits right now. Winter sports are on the brink. And obviously, if you're in the springtime, you have a little bit more time for them to figure it out. But these appeals aren't quick. I mean, this is not going to be the snap of a finger, like, let's just get this back down to the district court. Because once it goes to the district court, you still have to have a trial on the merits. And that can take 30, 60, 90 days. And so there's just a long way to go here. That's why that decision yesterday was so significant.
Right. So the NCAA knows that time might actually be on their side, because once it gets into the calendar year, they have even more of a case to say, hey, if you do this after fall sports begin, which they already have, then we might have to retroactively try to find players and athletes the way back in for next year or something. It's going to be all types of crazy. So I guess that's why the NCAA really, really has time on their side and was adamant about the stay. So do you think it's actually going to take potentially 30, 60 plus days, or do you think that there's some kind of sped up kind of process because of the timing necessity?
Well, we're all on the court's schedule, the court's calendar, the court's mercy. And so there's no telling, no lawyer, no lawyer that's practicing in the case can give you a specific idea what the federal court's ultimately going to do. That's on the federal court's timeline. Now, there are certain discovery rules that are in place. There's certain, kind of parameters or what the federal rules allow, and they can certainly put it on an expedited docket, but there's no guarantee that this could be resolved by December 1st. And so that's what's hard on these 2022 high school athletes, is that their window is just so thin here, and it's closing in on them. And why other athletes have now taken this approach, like, well, let's get relief somewhere else, which could ultimately be in the state court.
Right. So let's talk about the state court. Obviously, all these cases where the national case that was happening in Colorado, is happening in Colorado, covering the entire country of class of 2022 high schoolers getting a 5th year of eligibility, is one thing. But now, we've seen a really huge chunk, especially in college basketball at least, and probably a majority of the guys that are coming back, doing these local county-based cases on different parts of the law, different aspects of the law, is why they're not being denied or approved at the same level, I guess, as the national one, right? That's why all those are going through right now.
There's different claims of relief. So like some of the state court cases are about breach of contract. For potentially, obviously antitrust is so big on the federal side of it, and whether there's Sherman Act violations, which we could do an entire, semester course on. But for the state court cases, and I said this yesterday, a lot of it just depends on what type of relief is being requested. And so college coaches, and I appreciate the ones that have reached out to me all across the country. I've tried my best to get back to them, but the reality of it is every case is analyzed differently. And I don't care if you're in Ohio, you're in California, you're in Texas, even the states have particular laws. And so just because a judge in Ohio rules one way doesn't mean that same judge or similar judge in Tennessee would rule the same way, because there's different claims of relief and different standards of or burdens that may end up coming into play for each, specific case. So I want to be very clear. Getting a state court injunction or temporary injunction is obviously important. That can be considered a win, but that doesn't mean it can't be appealed, just like this Colorado federal court case. So all these decisions in my mind are somewhat just temporary in nature.
It feels like, I think we know that the state cases are basically plan B backup options for a lot of the athletes to say, hey, like if Colorado falls through, we have our Texas one, we have our Ohio one, we have our California one, to basically say that we can still play, we can still practice with our team that we're committed to and now going to, or going back to, whatever that is. The plan B kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it feels like the NCAA is attacking this top down, which I guess kind of makes sense, where if they can get the national case basically taken away or somehow thrown out or rejected against them or for them against the court's decision, then they can maybe go, their plan is probably to go to the state ones, but there's just so many of them at this point, right?
Well, and that's the thing, is that the NCAA may be high-fiving in the Indianapolis offices today and tomorrow, but come Monday, they've got a slew of state court cases that are already pending or that will be pending.
They're going to have more probably right now because of the Colorado stay.
I actually think the chaos that they were trying to limit is actually going to explode and accelerate even more. And I say that, and I'm not saying that to sensationalize or to try to catch some soundbite. I actually think that there is going to be more student athletes saying, wait a minute, something's not right here. While state court cases maybe in Tennessee are being granted, but in Ohio, they're right now denied pending appeal. And so you can feel for these student athletes. And obviously, but for the NCAA not issuing a blanket waiver, they would be eligible under the new age-based rule. And that's what the problem is here.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because people a lot of people don't feel bad for the athletes because they're like, oh, like you're done. You only had 4 years. You knew that from the beginning. But then again, at this point, whether you believe that or not, I'm very adamant that the kids deserve an answer. The coaches, everyone deserves an answer. That's all we need. Whether we all agree it's right or wrong, everyone just wants an answer so they know what they can do and what they can do next and how they have to kind of go forward. And I do feel for the kids, and theoretically saying it out loud of, hey, the national case fell through. If you have a state and local case that approves you, even if it's temporarily, then you're good to go. But if you don't, then you don't. That's a crazy privilege of having accessibility to those things that you need. And obviously everyone has agents, NIL agents. They have access to attorneys more easily now than usual. But it's still kind of crazy that there is a world that maybe some guys play because they have county and state specific cases and others just don't, not because one falls under the law better than the other one. Do you think that's a legit possibility that obviously the fall sports are crazy, but we'll talk basketball by basketball season, that some fifth year guys might be playing because they have a state case approved and some won't?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that will be the case depending on what state court case that you're in. And those athletes that were now denied in this federal court case, they can't all just, by the snap of a finger or, writing their name on a piece of paper, join a new lawsuit. Right. That's not how this works. You have to have specific relief requested by a court and court permission to get into a lawsuit for several reasons. One, you have to actually have suffered an injury or suffered a harm. Two, you have to have a jurisdictional basis. And three, you have to have a good faith claim as to why you can jump into a lawsuit or bring your own lawsuit. I think, some of these athletes are just saying, well, I'll just sue just to sue. Well, you better have a good faith basis to sue, or you risk potentially sanctions or some other, constraint being levied against you.
Can guys sue using other approved cases, even on preliminary injunctions, as precedent in other states, or no?
So typically what people do is if they're filing a fresh lawsuit in a separate state, a lot of times what they'll do is either cite or at least some way highlight to the court that there's persuasive authority out here, and look what this other court did in a very similar or same circumstance as being, filed here. And judges in one state do not have to follow the laws of another state by any means, or the judge's decisions in another state. You have to apply the law as it is in your state or it is in your jurisdiction that in the case before you. So while there are going to be copycat lawsuits, like I said, each case is on a fact by fact, independent basis that needs to be reviewed by a judge.
This feels like the chaos spiral that you said is probably only just getting started, which feels insane. It's felt like that for years with the NCAA, and all in certain different ways. Now it's fifth year eligibility. It's always about very different things. You have worked with and for the NCAA in some capacity, and you know them, and you understand their side really well. Do you think that it's gotten to a point where they need to just accept defeat and say, like, okay, maybe we lost this one, and for the sake of everyone's sanity and for controlling chaos in our sport and sports in the NCAA, we need to accept defeat and say fifth year eligibility, everyone takes one, and then we're good into the age-based model after that?
Respectfully, I don't. As a former student athlete in the NCAA who reaped all the benefits of the institution that it was behind, as a former college basketball coach, you have to have bylaws in place. You have to have some level of regulation. You have to have basically a governing body overseas, so there is not just complete dysfunction. Now, could the NCAA have made different decisions or maybe taken a different path throughout the course of time? Well, of course. In hindsight, everything's 2020, and we all could have done different things, had we seen what would happen in the rearview mirror before. So I think the NCAA was in a predicament this past spring of 2026, weighing the cost-benefit analysis of granting this 2022 high school Class E eligibility. And unfortunately, I think time was against their side because that 5-5 rule went into effect in June. And I think in their minds, they thought this is too late with NIL and revenue share and reporting numbers and everything that has to fall into place. And basically July 1st kind of starts this new calendar year. In their mind, they were thinking, well, we're not going to add that class back in. Somewhere we had to draw the line. And unfortunately, I think had the time been on their side back in maybe February or March, and this was all coming down the pipeline, they could have easily grandfathered them in, similar like they did in COVID. They made a drastic decision in COVID to give that extra year, and they could have done that. But by the time June rolled around, I think they were up against the wall, and they did not want to basically thrust all those athletes back in. So again, we can criticize the NCAA all day, but they're all enforcing bylaws that these schools, these Student Athlete Advisory Council, all of those people vote for in the legislation that they want to have passed. So it can't always work both ways, for and against them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And the timing thing, they obviously knew about this age-based model before June when they put it into action. If they had, like you said, February or March before the season's over for basketball, obviously it's different for every sport, but before the school year's over, basketball, a lot of guys declaring for the draft and all these things, and football, obviously even before football draft in April, where you wouldn't have all these graphics of Utah Jazz back to BYU and then the NBA. Like, they wouldn't have gone into those process, which is crazy. In your expert opinion, do you have a gut feeling on what you think is going to happen next?
Well, I will say this. I think the 5-5 rule creates some stability. I think the fact that now going forward, once we get past this, big volcano of activity that we've had over the class of 2022, God bless them. I think we will at some point be able to move on from them and just enjoy college sports for what they are. Now, where everything has changed is obviously with money. Like, we're not going back to the days of pure amateurism and, the 80s and 90s and 2000s where guys are going to be staying at places for 4 years. The best coaches in the game, the best athletic directors in the game, all adapt and embrace this type of change. And so where I think we go next is obviously those forward thinkers, those innovators, those people who are on the, the cutting edge and the trends. Those will be the ones that succeed in this business. And I think it's so easy to complain, and it's so easy to say, well, this is like this. And you know what? Then get out of the business. Then don't be in it. Let somebody who's going to run headfirst, into the storm and embrace it, be a part of the game. And so speaking of all those things, I just think the next big layer of this too is that college sports bill. Protect College Sports Act, and where that ultimately goes. And right now, based on the feedback that I've heard from DC, from college coaches, that bill still has a long way to go.
Okay, that's not unsurprising, to be honest. I'm not an expert like you are. It's unsurprising though. It's good to know. Do you know how you can actually not answer this because I know you have some obligations or whatever? Do you think the fifth years that are trying to get back, you think they all play this year in college basketball?
I don't think they all do, but I think some do.
Oh,
And I think,
shit.
yeah, I do think some of these fifth years will ultimately pass the test, and some of these state courts will side in their favor. Obviously, you got that California case with 70 plus athletes. Ohio could still actually come back and sway back the pendulum back on the athlete side. Obviously, Tennessee's in the athlete's favor. You saw what happened in Louisiana. So I think there's going to be conflicting state opinions, and some athletes will absolutely be eligible. But will all of them? I do not believe that will be the case.
That sounds like the worst case scenario. That some play because they're in some cases that have the right, arguing the right law or because of the right timing too, and then some just don't. And it, like, theoretically, the fans, everyone, we're all annoyed because it should just be yes or no for everybody. That's all we want, but we're not going to get that, are we?
Well, until there is federal legislation that's enacted, until we get past this class of 2022, obviously the NCAA's got the 5 for 5 moving forward. I think we're going to go through a year of essentially purgatory and limbo with these athletes. And again, the power of the federal government vests significant amount of authority to the states. And so I can give the history lesson on this as well and say, listen, we can't control what state you live in or what state you filed in. Obviously, you have to have that jurisdictional basis to bring a claim in that state. We have 50 states. We have different opinions. Judges all across the country have different opinions, different beliefs, different styles or arguments that they either believe or don't believe. So there's going to be conflict over the course of the next 9 months until we get through this 26-27 sports year.
Democratic process is truly something special. Honestly, I might take you up on that history lesson, whether it's on or off camera, whatever. Like, I think it'd be worth it. I'm interested. I took some law classes in school, did not have the guts to do what you did, and I was like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to do this. So I commend you for being here and appreciate you obviously a ton. But we're going to have you back on for sure, because I know people are going to respond well to this, and they're going to be like, I learned more on the show than I have ever learned from you speaking to me in my entire life. So we're going to have to bring you back on, right?
I appreciate that. And we didn't even get to the trapezoid of excellence. So we will.
Okay, you get it. All right, Mitch Gilfillan, appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
My man. Thank you.
That was my man, Mitch Gilfillan. Appreciate him coming on. Obviously, that was beneficial definitely for me to understand and learn everything else that I need to know and all the little implications and specificities with where things might move. It's actually wild to hear him say, like, I think that some guys are going to play and some guys aren't. And it just blows my mind, all the little loopholes and issues and holes really within the bylaws that the NCAA has for fifth-year eligibility, and how they're being attacked from so many different angles and so many versions of the law and so many, I don't know how to explain it. So many, listen, I took business law, contract law, sports law in college. I was on track to be like, oh, maybe I'll go to law school. Completely chalked that up. So I got to do better at my vocabulary, but absolutely crazy where fifth-year eligibility is. It's basically just a waiting game at this point. Like he said, it could be an expedited process, but it might take 30, 60, 90 days, which will leak into basketball season and be an absolute nightmare, which is obviously part of the NCAA's case. Now, we talked about that a ton. Let's get on with the rest of news and notes around the country. The other big news, we have fifth-year commitments all over the place. Let's get right to that. We have Donovan Dent to LSU, which is one that was completely out of left field, where they came late into his recruiting process, at least up in his rankings. Everyone thought it was Gonzaga when he announced, I'm actually not retiring from basketball because I have another year to play in college. But he ends up going to Will Wade and LSU if he's deemed eligible, of course. I think he's in one of the state cases, so he should be eligible if the national one doesn't go through. But I know that LSU has a court case down there that they can obviously spin up, I think, if they need to. But Donovan Dent to LSU is wild. When you look at LSU's roster, like, people are like, oh, like, they're going to be garbage. They are not going to be garbage. I know we said this about NC State last year with Will Wade, but this team doesn't have a full roster yet. I don't think they're done with just Donovan Dent, but add Donovan Dent to Sky Clark and the guys they already have with Abdi Bashir, Mo Diabate, a bunch of European guys, Devon Ugochukwu from Michigan State. They're probably going to get 2 or 3 more guys that are fifth-year players to fill out their roster. So LSU's roster is something to keep an eye on. They're obviously heavily waiting on whether fifth years get eligibility or not, because if they don't, they might be screwed. A bunch of other commitments, but the main one, Mark Mitchell to Kentucky. This is what Kentucky fans have been waiting for, and I feel like they deserve something of this and people will have very polarizing opinions because this is Kentucky. So people will either love it or hate it, and no in between. I actually am kind of in between. I'm more on the positive. I don't know how you can be negative about getting Mark Mitchell. I think fans just look at Kentucky and they want to talk down on them because they have a rightful case to do that with Mark Pope's lack of success, I'd say, by the Kentucky standard and expectations and financial investment that they've had. but people also just like to talk down on them, be like, they're never going to get there. Mark Mitchell's a great player. He's one of the best power forwards in the entire country. When I look at the Kentucky roster, now start to finish, assuming the fifth years get deemed eligible, this is the best team that Mark Pope has ever had as a college basketball coach at Utah Valley, at BYU, here at Kentucky also in his now what it's going to be a third year. This is the best team that Mark Pope has ever had, and on paper, this is a top 10 roster in college basketball. You have Alex Wilkins and Zoom Diallo, the starting backcourt. I've talked a lot about Alex Wilkins, how much I loved him at Furman as a true freshman mid-major star last year. He's got to work on some efficiencies, especially on turnovers, but I think on lesser usage, better team, more refined role, second year of experience, I think that'll improve. Alex Wilkins and Zoom Diallo in the backcourt. Milan Momcilovic, that's my guy, best shooter in the entire country, one of the best shooting seasons we've ever seen in college basketball last year. Mark Mitchell, all second-team SEC. I think he was one of the best power forwards in the country at the 4. And then Malachi Marino, your young breakout second-year big at the 5, who was dancing with NBA waters a little bit. He tested heavily. He was 50-50, going to stay in the draft or come back to school. Ends up coming back to school. He's your big returner. He averaged 8 and 6 last year and a block and a half a game. That's going to go up heavily. They need him. They need his rim protection. They need the returner. They need their leader within the clubhouse, at least in the locker room, at least as a guy that was in Lexington last year. That's a great starting 5. Then they have Frank Kepnang, Cam Williams, Justin McBride from JMU, who I love, Ousmane Ndiaye from Senegal, Jerome Morton, Reese Potter, who should be able to play this year. They have the Hawthorns. They have Trent Noah, Mason Williams. I don't think the depth of their bench is going to play a lot, but when I look at this roster, this is one of the best rosters in the country on paper. Now, offensively, they're going to hum. Mark Pope's teams have been very fast-paced, tried to have a lot of spacing, attack the basket, offensively flowing and offensive focus. His defenses have not been good objectively. So offensively, they're going to be good. They have the shooting, they have playmakers, they have size, they have depth of size, and they just have overall talent. Like, their roster is just good. It's that simple. And when you have a good roster, at least you know the offense is going to be good, especially in a Mark Pope system. Now, the questions come. Defense is one, obviously. Mark Pope has never had a top 25 defense as a college basketball coach analytically. Last year was his only year. They were 28th inside the top 50 ever. And last year, they were not the 28th best defense. They were analytically, I understand that, and I'm using analytics here. But you watch them, you know their defense was not consistent enough. It was not reliable enough at all. Last year was kind of a weird year for them overall. So I get that defense looks somewhat good out of that. But do you have the pieces defensively to be better? Sure. I think Alex Wilkins and Milan could still be holes. They will still be holes, but Zoom can defend. Mark Mitchell's a really good defender. Malachi, obviously. Frank Kepnang. You have Cam Williams off the bench also. Hopefully Ousmane Ndiaye, if he's getting burned, is going to be a good defender. I still see too many holes to completely offset Mark Pope's usual performance out of his system defensively. So that does worry me still a little bit defensively, but I think they're going to be better because they do have the pieces there. And then just generally, how do they mesh? It sounds so stupid, but that's kind of goes in with the coaching also, right? Like, Mark Pope is not, I don't know how to say, I don't think he's on a hot seat per se, but Mark Pope, all eyeballs are on him. This is his third year. He's going into his third year at Kentucky of spending $20 million plus a year to put together a roster when Kentucky fans think it should be top 10 in the country every year. This is the best team he's had yet. So we're looking to Mark Pope to say, how are you going to coach this team up and how are they going to mesh, which is a big part of coaching. Everybody's new. Every key player is new except for Malachi Marino, Cam Williams, if he's healthy and good to go. And then, you want to go deep into Reese Potter and Trent Noah, I guess. Like, Reese Potter was there last year, but he didn't play. Same with Braden Hawthorne. Trent Noah barely played. Like, there's not a lot of continuity that's going to be playing this year outside of two guys. So how are you going to get these guys to mesh? What are the rotations going to be like? Are you going to be able to fit every piece in where you need to? So that's my other question for them. But they should be better defensively. Pope has yet to eclipse that ceiling of being anything other than maybe second weekend team like they did 2 years ago. And they got to the Sweet 16 and then it was over last year. They're obviously round of 32. I have a lot of hesitancy to believe that Kentucky is going to be a national title contender this year. I can't say it yet, but they will be a top 15 team in the country. I do believe that this team is going to be Kentucky's best team under Mark Pope in his 3 years here so far, and they weren't bad in his first year. They just weren't amazing like you want them to be. So Mark Mitchell to Kentucky, that's a lot to look out for. I know Kentucky fans wanted to hear from me. Kentucky fans are kind of like Michigan State fans. They think that I hate them. but I genuinely don't, I promise. Other news and notes around the country. AJ Mitchell becoming the UC Santa Barbara GM. I should have put the jersey up. We have it over here. But AJ Mitchell, UC Santa Barbara GM, I absolutely love that. We've seen that with Stephen Davidson. We've seen that with Dame in Weber State. We've seen that with, I think it was Patty Mills. Was he with Hawaii? I don't think it was with St. Mary's where he went. I thought it was with Hawaii, but it might have been St. Mary's. I might be wrong. But we've seen NBA players that come from mid-major level go back to help their mid-major program and be the GM, even if they're going to be just a celebrity GM. AJ Mitchell is not going to be sitting there recruiting, going on recruiting trips, calling recruits late at night. Like, he's not doing that. That's fine. He's there to have celebrity status, to hopefully inject some donorship and eyeballs and funds into the program, and also make it more known that, hey, UC Santa Barbara, like, we've produced good players, especially at the NBA level, and he's the face of the Gauchos basketball program. So I think it's absolutely awesome for them to have him so involved and so loved by the entire fan base they have there and in community and school. And it's going to help them recruit going forward, without a doubt, especially as their conference realignment changes out west, not this year, but next following year. I think it's really cool for him. Like, he obviously takes a lot of pride in coming from the mid-major level and coming from UC Santa Barbara. He's talked about that a lot. We might get him on the show at some point. We had a scheduling issue this week, but they're a friend of the program. So shout out to UC Santa Barbara. That is awesome. And then UConn hires Charlie Stevens as its first GM. I thought that was interesting. Brad Stevens, family member, obviously. Easy, obvious hire. He's been working in the NBA and the G League, also with the Spurs for a while in player development. They had a GM, a guy who wasn't their GM. Then he was titled their GM last year. This is their first person, I think, formally hired as the GM when they came in. The most obvious good hire ever. If you can't get Brad Stevens, get the next best thing. And obviously at UConn is going to continue to UConn. So Arizona also. News and notes, I can't forget about that. Arizona went abroad this week I forget, they played Lithuania A team, Lithuania B team, then they played one of the other national teams out there. I think it was Ukraine, with their entire roster other than RJ Godfrey, who they're just kind of waiting in limbo with fifth-year eligibility on the Clemson transfer. But Arizona went abroad. 3 takeaways that I have for the most part. I've watched about half of the gameplay so far. I'm going to get into the rest of it. I thought Caleb Holt, I wanted to see more, obviously, out of your elite 5-star freshman who might be able to be a top 3 pick if things go well. He didn't score the ball super well. He was very inefficient. The turnovers were there too. I'm hesitant to say I'm super excited. I think he'll be fine. I think there's a good chance that Caleb Holt could be their best or second best player if you give it a few weeks into the season, kind of like I felt with Braden Burries last year. Listen, it's August. This is why they're playing abroad. Get into the flow of things. Go ahead and do that, because when we come back to campus and for the fall, and then it gets to October when we're playing scrimmages in November for the season, I'm not really too worried about him. I just am hesitant to say that he's going to be the superstar that some people might want him to be, but Caleb Holt looked good enough for me to say he's a grown man amongst boys playing against grown men in a way. So I'm excited for him at Arizona. I think Derek Dixon is awesome. I think he's a big breakout candidate that people aren't talking about really in the landscape of college basketball. When I do a big breakout list, which should be probably in the next week or two, Derek Dixon will be I think he's top 20. I'll just tell you now. He's definitely top 20 on there, I think. Derek Dixon is... Oh, he's top 10 on there. Derek Dixon, top 10 breakout candidate for me. And then Ivan Karchenkov looked unbelievable. He was, talk about like an alpha. And he was treating them like their Game 7 of the NBA Finals and Super Bowl games out there. Ivan Karchenkov looked absolutely awesome. Him taking a next step is huge for Arizona, because Caleb Holt could be the 1A, could be the star of the team. But having a guy who's older, more experienced, and been there and was there at the Final Four last year, obviously starting, I think is huge for them to take that leap. Because Mo Krivas, I don't think, is going to be taking this massive leap that I don't think anyone really envisions that. So Karchenkov having more upside to step into a higher usage, higher on-ball role would be awesome. That is going to do it for news and notes. The next couple segments we're going to do after this, take a quick break, and we'll get into Q&A, where we just have a bunch of stuff about mid-major players, like I mentioned earlier, building a team for All-Americans, mid-major, low-major stars, hot seat coaches, etc. We'll get right into it. So quick break, and then we'll do that right now. All right, second part of the episode, I wanted to do Q&A. I wanted to give everyone a good opportunity before we get into the juice close to the season to do some kind of mailbag. It's not a full mailbag episode, but we have about, I think, 5 or 6 questions that I kind of have extensive answers for. Questions that I probably wouldn't answer closer to the season, might be more retroactive and thinking back, but also are just a little different. And once we get into September, I mentioned in the last couple of weeks of episodes, things will get a little different. Things are going to look a little different around here. And also just the content will be different. It'll be much more geared towards season predictions, conference previews, All-Americans, etc. A lot of training camp reports, injury updates, fifth-year updates, etc. So I wanted to give a section, especially without Adam here today. I thought it was a good opportunity for me to kind of lock in like that. So first question comes from the man Logan Adams on Twitter. Top 5 true mid-major players coming into the season. He says no Gonzaga or no Big East. So I don't think the Pac-12 or the A-10 are mid-major conferences. I definitely don't think that. The question said no Gonzaga, no Big East. I'm going to put the Pac-12 because Gonzaga's in that conference. So I'm going to put the Pac-12 out of the way for now. I have a list beyond 5. I go 10 deep because I have A-10 players in here who I don't think are mid-major players, but based on the question, I'm going to give you a list of 10 because of that. Roman Damone is the first one out of Murray State. One of the best freshmen in the entire country last year and in the MVC. He averaged 14 points a game, 5 rebounds, almost 2 assists a game. He shot well. He's smooth. He has been the dude out of summer camp, out of training camp, out of going abroad where Murray State was abroad, back overseas, closer to where he's from, playing that style, getting comfortable. But every word that I have heard and everything you saw as the year went on last year points to Roman Damone being one of the best mid-major players in America this year. I don't think he's going to be an All-American per se, but if Murray State has an unbelievable year, crazier things have happened. He is just the true archetype also of what a high upside wing is, especially for an NBA player in terms of being comfortable on the ball, being lengthy, being athletic, having really good intuition. I don't know if it's going to be after year 2. It might be after year 3. It might be after year 4 or even year 5 because of NIL money. But Roman Damone will be an NBA player, and I think his year 2 is going to be absolutely unbelievable. And I think he's going to have the chance to go into the 2027 NBA draft after this year at Murray State. Another guy, Amel Latang, going into year 3 at Dayton. Amel Latang is, I don't think he'll be an All-American like Deron Holmes and Obi Toppin were, but the vision for Amel Latang is to take that next step as their big guy who does everything for the Flyers, just like Obi did before he broke out, just like Deron Holmes did before he broke out. I think Deron, archetype-wise, is a little more the fit than Obi. Obi was kind of a super unique type of player, but in terms of being a 5 who can shoot the ball well, who rebounds really well, who is a good interior protector, and can take that step as a playmaker, as being on the ball, that's what Deron Holmes did, and that's what let him become an NBA player, and a damn good one, I think, now that he's fully healthy. Hopefully he gets that chance. But Amel Latang, I was there talking to him also about that breakout and that step. Those are the guys he kind of models his game after. He averaged 12 and 6 last year, an assist and a half. He shot the ball very well. His spacing ability is great. He's a legit 7'1". They call him Frenchie out there, Big Frenchie. Big Frenchie's a legit 7'1", if not more. He's absolutely massive. So I think Amel Latang's gonna have a great year. I think also one of their rivals, VCU, Lazar Djokovic and Nick Lewis, are both going to have unbelievable seasons for VCU. This team could be a top 25 team in the country, especially if they're going to both contend with each other for Conference Player of the Year or at least first team All-Conference. They're both unbelievable, and Nick Lewis will be more of a breakout because Lazar was a little bit better last year, but Nick is ready for that breakout in year 2. I have full faith in sort of their coaching staff of him being amazing. Kenyon Giles at Wichita State. If he gets his 5th-year eligibility fully cleared, he said he's going to come back to Wichita State. Absolutely awesome player to watch, and Wichita State's going to be good. So the Shockers could be a team to watch out of the AAC this year because I don't think they're fully back to like what we want out of Wichita State, but we just want Wichita State to be relevant again. And I think this is the year they could be, especially with Kenyon Giles back playing. Jake Hall at New Mexico. If you're a listener of this show year-round, you know I love Jake Hall. He's one of the best shooters you'll see in the country. He's intriguing. He's crafty. He plays like a vet. Heading back to New Mexico, who is staying in the Mountain West. All those teams are going to the Pac-12, so Jake Hall is going to absolutely dominate in year 2 for the Lobos in New Mexico. Robert Hinton at Harvard. He's another guy that I talked about before last year. They had a trio of guys with Chandler PJ and Thomas Batiz, who's I think still there also. But Robert Hinton is absolutely the dude. I still think he has NBA potential out of the Ivy League as well. Joshua Dent staying at St. Mary's for year 3. One of the best true playmaking mid-major guards in the entire country, staying at St. Mary's. They're staying in the WCC, so he should have a great year for them. Jack Smiley back to another sophomore breakout wing in the MVC. Jack Smiley at Belmont. They've done this time and time again with certain young guys that have a really good year one, show promise, and then have a crazy blast-off breakout in year two. I think Jack Smiley could be the guy. And then Tavari Johnson at Charleston. Following his coach, if he gets his fifth year of eligibility, John Gross from Akron to Charleston, another system. Obviously, the system works for him. He's been playing in it, but he was already one of the best mid-major guards in the entire country. So put him in Charleston in the CEA. John Gross is going to let that guy fly also. So that's 10 guys. I know the question was 5. I went 10 anyway. My man Dill's Chat says, if you could build a starting 5 to compete for a national championship, who would be at each position? Now, I thought about this one a lot because this is not the 5 best players in the country. That's not what I'm picking here. I'm sure you could take the 5 best players in the country at each position and you could probably win a national championship realistically. But that's not how I went about this. I went about having elite traits that I need, that I want to fit in a team. I didn't do a ton of analytical research in terms of how they might pair with each other. I'm just answering the Q&A question as is. But, man, I'm still toying with the point guard. I'm going to start at the 5 because I need a second for the point guard. Actually, no, I'm going to start at the 1. At first, I was going to go Tyler Tanner at the 1. I also thought of Rob Wright, Jeremy Fears, a ton of guards. I'm going with Silas Demery at the 1. Silas Demery Jr. is one of the best point guards in the country. This year, in his second year after transferring, in his second year at UConn this year, after transferring obviously from Georgia, he is going to have a Tristan Newton-like breakout. Tristan Newton was good in his first year, not amazing for UConn when they won a national championship, but then when he had to step up and be the dude and be the hub for them, he was just that. He was an All-American, one of the best guards in the entire country, and they obviously won another national championship. Silas Demery has very similar traits. He's smart. He has good intangibles. He's a great defender. He's lengthy, and he's played a role where he can be a great facilitator and a great point guard and take over games like we've seen, but he doesn't need to be the dude all the time. That's a lot of traits that I want. Not that all those other point guards that I mentioned I don't want. I'm just going to take Silas Demery to build my team. My 2 guard, I went with Price Sanford out of Nebraska, one of the best shooters in the country. He's got a great release. He's going to keep defenders honest, but he is a very underrated playmaker. He's an underrated defender. He bought into a Nebraska system that in turn let him shine. I love all the traits he has. I love all the abilities he has, and I love that about him. So I'm putting Price Sanford at the 2. My 3 is going to be Billy Richmond. Listen, Billy Richmond's the absolute best player of all time. Just kidding. But we always say that. Billy Richmond, the best glue guy role player you'll ever see in college basketball. Him staying another year instead of going into the draft this year, he might elevate beyond what that elite role player is, but I don't think he's ever going to be the star, and that's fine. What I want for this team is a guy who doesn't need to do that. He does all the dirty work. He's an unbelievable rebounding guard. He's an elite athlete. He showed spacing ability in games throughout the year, and especially through the NBA process. Billy Richmond would be the most elite role player possible for a national championship contending team. My 4, I went with Tommy Houck. Tommy Houck is similar to Billy Richmond, just like a little bit of, he's a good chunk up there, a good step up. Tommy Houck was the best player in Florida last year, but he wasn't this like takeover star. That's not who he is. I'm sure he's developing more and more to do that this year for Florida in year 4, but Tommy Houck doesn't need to do that either. He doesn't have to dribble the ball. He doesn't have to put the ball down. He can be a rim runner, put him in the dunker spot, put him on the outside. He can space a little bit. He's a great defender. Like this guy and Tommy Houck and Billy Richmond would be an absolutely unbelievable forward and wing duo. I would absolutely love that. And then at the 5, I needed a guy who was big. I needed an anchor in the current landscape of college basketball. You need size. You need shot blocking. We have enough spacing, I think, with the first 4 guys that I can take a guy like Mo Krivas, one of the best rim protectors in the entire country, was obviously one of the best bigs in the country last year. He's going to be this year again, potential national player of the year. You could argue that you could take guys like we mentioned, Voka Titus at Texas and Ruben Chinyulu. I considered JT Toppin, but I also wanted the true 5, Flory Badunga. Like there's all these different players. I ended up going with Mo Krivas, give me the grown man. So that's going to be Silas Demery, Price Sanford, Billy Richmond, Tommy Houck, and Mo Krivas. The defense is going to be unbelievable. I think we have enough shooting and spacing. Right? Like Tommy Houck can shoot. Billy Richmond, I still think Billy Richmond can shoot enough when we need to. Price Sanford's obviously the main floor spacer, and then I have Silas Demery who can do it too. I think maybe if you want to take out Demery and put in a guy like Tyler Tanner or someone who has really, really elite shooting range, I kind of get that. But that's my starting 5 to win a national championship. Next question. Let's see. Bennett Dean, who are some of your favorite low major players over the last 15 years? This one is interesting. depends what you classify as low major versus mid major, obviously. And at the time when they played, Thomas Walkup at SF Austin is the first guy that comes to mind. Absolutely unbelievable aura on top of being an amazing player, and obviously him having a tournament performance and getting a tournament win and a tournament upset is what led to everyone knowing everything about him. Fletcher McGee at Wofford, if you consider that low major at the time. Chris Clemens was one of the best scorers I've ever seen in college basketball. Man was scoring like 28, 29, and 30 points a game for like his last 3 years. I'm pretty sure he scored over 3,000 points in his 4 years. Dame time, Weber State. And then my favorite one, and I can remember honestly, I want to make sure I get the years exactly right, is, I got it. I do have the years right. From 2014 to 2018, Trey Bell Haynes at Vermont in the America East. He wasn't like this unbelievable takeover player. His best year, he averaged under 15 a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, but he was awesome. He could shoot the ball. He had elite outside ability and dynamic shot creation. He was a great playmaker. He was smaller and shifty. He's probably about 6 foot, 6'1". He was just an awesome player. And watching Vermont, for so many years at this point, it feels like I'll never forget him. He's one of my favorite low major players ever. If you consider that low major, I think that's a fair way to go. Let's see. We had 2 questions I paired together, both from Instagram. Sheldon222 asked, what are some breakout players that you are currently monitoring? And then Connor Fuchs also asked, what's your biggest sophomore year jump player? So I kind of put the breakout things together. I have a full list of 40 breakout candidates. I hope no one screenshots that and puts that anywhere because that was too quick, hopefully. I have a list of 40 breakout players that I'm going to be posting very soon. I have a lot of sophomores on there. I don't want to just jump to tell you guys everybody, but my few top breakout players in the entire country, and I'm not going to give you an order either. Trey McKinney is an obvious one. Davis Fogel is an obvious one. They are the top 2, I'll be honest. That is an order. But Trey McKinney and Davis Fogel, 2 sophomores that are going to absolutely break out for Michigan and Gonzaga this year. That was easy. Malachi Moreno, I've talked about earlier at Kentucky, another sophomore that's going to break out. Chance Mallory at Virginia, another sophomore that's going to break out. I think Kanan Boozer has a breakout year. Derek Dixon, I mentioned earlier, Matt Abel at North Carolina, Roman Damone at Murray State, Shelton Henderson at Miami. Those are all sophomores who I think are going to have massive breakout years. And sophomore breakouts are a very, very common thing. Those are the guys that are most privy to break out, especially when they are returning to their programs that they were at as freshmen, which Trey McKinney's doing, Davis Fogel's doing, Chance Mallory, Malachi Moreno, Shelton Henderson. Everyone on here, except for Matt Abel and Derek Dixon that I mentioned out of those sophomores, are going to be at the same school they were at in year 1. So I think that bodes well for them also. Let's see. JBB on IG asks, what schools and coaches are under the most pressure this year? Very, very good question. I don't take this as who's on the hot seat because pressure and hot seat are very different things because you could be on the hot seat if your team has been garbage for 3 years and you're not expected to be good again. And then if you're not good, you get fired. Where having pressure, I think of the top teams in the country for the most part, at least top expectations. Kentucky and Louisville are the easiest answers, without a doubt. 2 fan bases that have experienced massive success at the highest level, so they have high standards for every single coach that comes in, for every single season they have. On top of that, Pat Kelsey, Mark Pope are both heading into year 3 of spending more money than anybody else in college basketball probably to build their rosters, and going into year 3 after 2 years of, I'd say, relative disappointment. Blame it on whatever you want, blame it on locker room issues, blame it on injuries one way or another. They have not lived up to the standard that fans have expected of them yet. They haven't been bad, obviously, but both those programs and both those fan bases expect them to win national championships and to at least go to a Final Four and be a danger to go to a Final Four. Like, you've known the last couple of years with these 2 teams in the tournament that they weren't going to really break through and go anywhere deep. So Kentucky and Louisville are very, very obvious ones. I think John Shire and Duke, after a couple of chokes, especially in the NCAA tournament, 2 years in a row, I think that's a massive, massive not hot seat. They're under a lot of pressure. John Shire, I don't think will care about the outside pressure, but at least in the media and in the world and by all the fans, the pressure is always on Duke, to be fair. Like, it's the same kind of thing with Kentucky because even when Coach Cal was there and when they were good in the mid and late 2010s, the pressure is always on when you're that elite of a program. Duke is the pinnacle of standard in college basketball, up there with whoever you want to put up there. But Duke is that. The fact that they have choked away 2 years in a row in the Final Four and in the Elite Eight to Houston, absolutely Absolute crazy choke job with inexperience in their players and the coaching staff. Choke job. And the Braylon Mullins shot after the UConn comeback in the Elite Eight last year. Crazy things happen, but that's on them for losing that game and turning that ball over and doing so many things wrong. So I think John Shire and Duke have a lot to get through this year. And I think Florida. We talk about teams of pressure if you're just good. Florida won a national championship 2 years ago. They started off the year last year so rocky. Still end up dominating the SEC, getting to a 1 seed, and then they lose in the round of 32 to Iowa. Now you bring that same team back for the most part. You obviously swap out Xavier Lee for Denzel Aberdeen, and some other depth pieces are different, but you still don't have the backcourt that won you a national title 2 years ago, but you have the team that got you a 1 seed last year that had clear limitations and holes that ended up dropping them early in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So now keeping that core together, doing it again, what is it going to look like? Is it going to look like last year, or is it going to look like it did 2 years ago? Maybe in a little bit of different sense, obviously, because the guards are different and you don't have Walter Clayton because it's ridiculous. But I think there's a decent amount of pressure on Florida because of the expectations and because of the success that they've had and they've built for themselves. Pressure is a good thing. Pressure makes diamonds. That's what they say. And then last question I'll go here. I thought this was a fun one because why not? Premier League started 3 days ago as of posting this episode. Liam Inglis on IG asked, what are your Prem predictions for the season? Well, one, Arsenal is going to win the title. I genuinely think that we are the best team. I say we. I don't like people say that all the time, but I think that Arsenal is the best team in the Premier League by a good chunk. I don't want to say landslide because that's ridiculous. And it's a long, long season and so much could happen. But I think Arsenal wins the title. I think Bournemouth end up finishing top half, and I think they end up being really good. I like them. I think Ipswich stay up. I love Newcastle. They got kind of shafted today against Liverpool. They deserve to win the game. You can argue there was a penalty at the end of the 99th minute, and Szoboszlai scores to tie it up 2-2 at St. James. But I love Newcastle. Love the way they play, being direct. I think Ipswich stay up. And then, of course, I think United and Spurs finish outside of European competition again. So that's my Premier League prediction. That is going to do it for the episode today. Appreciate y'all for being here, obviously. I am 99.9% sure that next week when you listen to this show, it is going to look a lot different. So I hope you guys are excited. Hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of mostly solo show today. But listen, like, subscribe, comment, follow, leave a review if you're on Spotify, wherever you are. We appreciate you a ton, and we will see you when things look different next week.